So we will go ahead and get started. Very excited to have so many people interested in learning more about clinical research and how to enter that program through the Institute for Health Professionals. I'm going to introduce myself here. I am Amy Evans. I am one of the program coordinators with PCC's Institute for Health Professionals. And with the help of an advisory committee and lots of very committed clinical researchers, we developed this program a few years ago. I have a background in healthcare in a variety of facets and community health education, as well as workforce development. So I've really enjoyed working to support both the professional development needs and the entry level for people wanting to explore entering the healthcare field or adding to what they're already doing with some additional skill development. So the rest of the group are some of the instructors in our program, and I will turn it over to them to introduce themselves.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Armando Martinez, and I actually started in research working for a large pharmaceutical company, hired on as a temporary, and primarily I was just responsible for making copies of protocols and consent forms. And what piqued my interest in research is, as I was making copies, I started to read the consent form and learn a little more about the study, what it entailed, what was involved. And pretty much with the support of the company, they pretty much supported my schooling and worked towards a degree and worked up the ladder to the department, from a staff assistant to a research assistant to project coordinator. And when I left there, was in a managerial role as a study management associate. During that time also, there was a similar certification program being offered to the University of Santa Cruz. It's a 2-year program, which I took, and it's more involved with the design and management of clinical trials. So that helped me in understanding what really happens or what needs to happen to open a trial up from the sponsor's perspective and also from the site, whether that site is a clinic or a hospital or what have you. So that's my background. So I've been in research well over 25 years. Title may be the same depending where you work, but the responsibilities vary. So I do have a background in regulatory, budgets, some contracts, working with patients, consenting, and of course data. So it's a vast, I would say, area to look at when you're considering clinical research. You can focus on one initially and say, I'm interested in data, but as you learn more about what's involved in clinical research, you may branch off to do something else. And again, like I said, the position title may be the same, but the responsibilities would vary depending on the organization that you're working with. So, welcome.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Phillips, and I'm a little newer to research than Armando, but I was working towards my master's in occupational therapy when I just really took to the research project I was working on in school. And I just love having a project that has a clear beginning and end, and you're collecting data and you're trying to understand research questions. And I'm just a really naturally curious person. And so that drew me to research. And I actually really love data. So I started working in clinical trials research and then started working towards my certified clinical research professional certification, which is something we can talk about in the classes, that it's another level, which Armando also has, and as does Rachel, who you'll hear from. Just gives you more in-depth knowledge about clinical research. And I am working in clinical oncology trials right now, which I really love. They, as Rachel will tell you, are probably the more complex clinical trials, but each type of area of research has its own challenges. I've been doing this for a while now, and I'm so interested in data that I'm continuing to take biostatistics classes. So I'll be teaching you guys the data analysis part, just an overview, and if you get really excited about that, we can go more in depth. But that's a little insight into my background, and now you'll hear from Rachel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Sauter. I'm excited to be here with you guys tonight to share my love of research. So I've been working in research for over 20 years, and I started at the bottom. I was doing an internship for my undergraduate classes at Portland State, and I ended up in a research office doing somewhat similar to Armando. I was hand typing consent forms back in the day when we had floppy disks. And that evolved, and now fast forward 20 years, I've worked with patients, I've consented patients, I've done regulatory. Data started out a little bit differently than it is now, but that's how I got into it, and I love it. Obviously, that's why I've stayed so long, and probably one of my favorite things is you really feel like you're contributing to something bigger. Every piece of research matters. Even the smallest thing that you may think is mundane is important, and it's part of research, and you get to be part of a big team and a bigger picture and really make a difference. And it's pretty exciting, and it's exciting to see how it's changed over the years and to see all the different positions available in research. You could never get bored because you could try something new every month if you wanted to. So I'm grateful to be part of this program and to be able to share a little bit more with you guys tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. As you can see, we have a lot of experience and a lot of passion with clinical research in the room here. So we're going to move on to learning a little bit more about the field. Armando is going to share some information there.
Okay, so the question was, why do we enter clinical research field? And of course, the first bullet item is it continues to grow. When I started back here in Providence 2002, our department pretty much did everything. We had maybe a handful of nurses, a few data coordinators, maybe 1 or 2 research assistants, and I think that may have been it. So maybe 10, 12 people was our total in our department. Well, that department has now grown. Just data itself, meaning the data coordinators, there are about, 12 of us or 15 of us? 15 of us. The department itself, within the nurses who see the patients and the data coordinators, we also have research assistants who do all the lab sample processing, collections and processing. Then we have new roles that have just started with regard to starting new studies here at the hospital. So our department now is up to 40 people, and the whole regulatory piece has the whole department by themselves. Budgets and contracts has a whole section by themselves. So it continues to grow. And as you know, Providence has been growing and growing, and we outgrew, I think, 1, 2, 3 office spaces, and I think this may be our 4th office space. So we always plan for future growth, but we always continue to grow. So job security. With regard to the roles, I kind of touched on that. Titles may be the same, but the actual responsibilities do vary. So for instance, when I was a research assistant, all I did was process or collect lab samples, and then I'll do some minimal data with regard to regulatory. It was very basic, an introduction to regulatory. Somewhere else, that same role could be doing just strictly lab samples. The way it evolved in here at Providence, the research assistants pretty much do lab samples, or if there's any type of, like let's say CT scans, MRIs, imaging that the sponsor, the big pharma company, wants to review centrally, they call it central review. Those are uploaded now before or sent via disk, and they look at the same images that we look at here at the sites. So the research assistants will be doing that piece of the job. Here we have clinical research coordinators. Mainly we do all the data management of the study. So we're the ones capturing the data. We look at the patient's medical records and we extract the data from there and enter it into another system database, which someone else from the sponsor company will come out and verify what we entered is actually the data that's in the patient's medical record. We also have research nurses. They're the ones that actually see the patients. And then, of course, we have the principal investigator, the one who is overseeing the study. the primary person who has responsibility for the study, making sure we're all trained in what we're supposed to be doing in our roles. And with regard to portability and diversity, research, you learn what you learn, you take with you. So for myself, as an example, I started at Providence 15 years ago, and I went to Legacy in adult oncology for a while, went to Legacy Randall Children's, all in oncology research still, but different organizations, and then came back to Providence. Again, the knowledge that you learn from different positions, different organizations goes with you, and it's truly valued. With regard to diversity in clinical research, we primarily do oncology studies, but even within oncology studies, we do lung indication, breast, melanoma, and so forth, GI, GU indications. And then we also have not only treatment studies, but we have preventative studies. We also have cancer control studies, which are studies that they're not treatment. It's either observational, or it could be a registry type of study. So the types of studies vary. And that's just within oncology, cancer research. There's non-oncology studies. For example, there's device studies, there's infectious diseases studies. We work very closely with the NCI. So we have a lot of cooperative group studies that go on. So the gamut there's tons of different types of studies within clinical research that you can be working on. Here also, and it varies from organization to organization, but here at Providence, we also have our own doctors who do their own studies. They call those investigator-initiated studies. So a doctor would come up with an idea and say, oh, you know what if we did this and so and so? So they would develop a protocol, we would review it. It would have to go for review by the institutional review board to make sure patient safety is taken into consideration and so forth. So again, the field of clinical research is vast, and depending on your interest, your level of what really challenges you, what really keeps you motivated, you can go far. But as for myself, I started as a staff assistant, temporary position, no guarantee that I would be hired. Ended up being hired by the company within 3 months, was with the company 13 years, and then moved up to Portland and been here ever since. So very promising, very rewarding. And as Rachel mentioned, it's one piece that I do as a data person, but it's a contribution I'm making towards research and towards new treatments that become standard of care treatments. So it's something to think about.
For diversity, not only did Armando mention oncology, non-oncology, but right here at Providence, we have the Brain and Spine Institute. So they do their own research. Your own dermatology clinic might run their own research studies, your pediatrician. So really, truly, research is diverse. It is everywhere. You may not have noticed or paid attention, but I promise you will now. So you could really work anywhere in research.
And the certificate that we award is also portable, part of that. Anywhere you're getting your education and traveling, as well as your experience, you'll be taking that with you everywhere you go. So who makes up some of the, I think I forwarded, there we go. So there's lots of different roles within clinical research at all different levels, and Kimberly is going to share a few of those with us.
All right. Well, Armando did an awesome job of going over some of the roles. So I'll just pick some highlights and maybe things he didn't mention. Again, the biggest thing to stress is we're talking a little bit about what it's like on our team, but it varies from department to department. And like he said, when you're applying for jobs, look at the title, but also look at the job description. Here at Providence, we have our lab assistants, as Armando said, where a lot of people get their start, and many come from phlebotomy backgrounds, many come from, different types of backgrounds, working in lab, more bench science, working with patients. And they're really getting a good foot in the door in research and understanding all the nuances of the protocols and all the details that you really have to try to adhere to. you might hear clinical research associate, and in the industry, they tend to call those monitors, and they will be hired by a pharmaceutical company or what you call a CRO, which is a contract research organization. They're sort of a middleman between the pharmaceutical company and the site, and they are the experts in managing the trials. And so the monitors are a really important job because they come out to our site and verify our data and make sure that we're doing our job correctly, so that if the study were to get audited by the FDA at any time, we feel really, proud of the data that we've done and feel like it's pretty accurate to what we were supposed to be doing. Another, as I'm a clinical research coordinator, my role at Providence is primarily in data, but you might see that role at the VA or, a public health research organization where the research coordinator would be doing cognitive assessments with the patients or fitness assessments, maybe have a more active role with the patients. And so you want to think about what type of person you are. Are you okay sitting behind a computer, most of your day? Like, I actually like that. It's relaxing for me. Or do you like to be with the patients? Do you like to be interacting with them and consenting the patients and finding out why they want to be involved with research? So that's a more, you think about yourself and what you like to do. A data manager, you might work for a site or you might work for a pharmaceutical company, and you're really looking at all the data of all the patients on the trial and seeing if there's anything that doesn't fit. Maybe there's a huge range of lab values that, there's some outliers that you might contact the site and say, did you mean to collect this? Is there an error here? I think you should check your data. So these are people that are really looking at bigger trends and non-conformant data, things that might not make sense. If you're a person that really likes to balance a lot of balls up in the air, you might want to be a project manager. And these are people that are really responsible for the planning, developing the schedules, time, cost estimates, making sure that you're executing and managing the clinical trial effectively. And they're just as important as the scientists and the data managers. These are the people that really keep it together. As Armando mentioned, the nurses are vital. That does require more education, but we, for example, had one of our lab assistants who was working for us and planning to go to nursing school. And she just graduated and is interested in oncology. And so maybe we'll get her back in our department someday as a research nurse. And the nurses tend to have a specialized background in the research that they're doing. So they might have worked on the floor as oncology nurses, or like Rachel said, they maybe worked in a dermatology clinic and are really passionate about dermatology research, or love working with kids and want to find out more about pediatric conditions and that sort of thing. Again, if you're really into rules and regulations, you might find yourself gravitating towards the regulatory side of things, which is not my favorite thing to do, but I learned that you need to know all of it, but it's not necessarily what I want to do every single day. But I'm glad that there are people that love that. We also have a huge team that works on budget and finance and legal contracts. And so the cool thing about when you're starting off, or if you do the optional internship, is you can kind of taste all the different roles and find out what works for you and what you love. And some of our positions have developed, like one of our administrative assistants who started, in our reception area, and she did such a great job that we created a project startup assistant role for her. And she's really helping coordinate all those site initiation visits to try to decide if our site is appropriate for the study. And she works on time estimates, how much time is this going to take for our staff? And, can we really support this study at our site? So that's been pretty exciting. We also developed a new role called a QA auditor. So she is going through, as Armando mentioned about the investigator-initiated trials. We love our investigators. They're very passionate, but they don't always have some of their protocols can be a little bit all over the place. So we need to make sure that we double, triple check them. And we have an internal auditor that makes sure that they're following the rules and we're harnessing their creative passion a little bit, but they're getting the job done. And yeah, and then of course you have your data analysts, which again, that might take a little bit more education, but if you really love data, you can start by doing some basic analysis and looking for trends and, just doing some stuff in Excel that you might, see on YouTube. I mean, there's ways you can teach yourself stuff now, and it doesn't always require an advanced degree. It's just that curiosity and passion that really drives it. So I could talk on and on, but I'm gonna end there with the different roles.
As you can see and hear, there are so many different areas within clinical research that you can specialize in, different roles and ways to grow within it, that it really does tailor itself to a helping profession for a lot of people with different interests. Rachel is going to share with us a little bit more about some of the overarching characteristics that draw a lot of people into clinical research or make this a match for them.
So as Kimberly mentioned, there are so many avenues to go in clinical research. So is it right for you? Probably. You just have to find which niche is the right one for you. So some of the qualities and characteristics, it is a very fast-paced environment. Things are always changing. It's like putting out fires all the time. But sometimes you'll be working on the same project for a while, and that might get a little redundant, but always in between, there's something else that pops up. There's always new drugs we're studying. There's always new devices, new combinations of drugs. So it is very fast-paced. Things can change from day to day. The projects you're working on, little emergencies that pop up that need to be taken care of, you might be added to a special committee to work on things in between. So as long as you can keep up, it's a great environment for research, for working. There are different paces. Sometimes the regulatory might seem a little slower paced than the data coordinators, but it's really up to the exact position you're doing and the projects you're working on at the time. So detail oriented, as everyone has mentioned, we're working on data, very specific data that will eventually be looked at by the FDA. And if we don't get that right, drugs don't get approved, patients get sick, people can get hurt. The number one thing we're looking at here is patient safety. We're caring for our patients. So you have to look at all the numbers, everything you're researching, everything you're writing down, everything you're typing into the computer, it needs to be exact. We do double, triple checks. That's why we have a QA person. They're going in, going through our stuff, making sure we really wrote the correct data down, that we're reporting to the FDA the correct information. So you need to cross your T's and dot your I's for this type of position. It can be very challenging as well, especially if you're new to research. There's lots of acronyms to learn. There's lots of terminology that you may have never heard before. People are asking you a million questions and you might not know all the answers yet. And you're working with a very diverse group of people. You're working with doctors and nurses and lab people and radiology techs, radiation therapy. There's lots of different areas, lots of balls in the air, and it can be very challenging, but it's also very fulfilling. So in October of 2018, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to two cancer doctors for their research in immunology, Dr. James Allison and Dr. Tasuka Honjo. And our own Dr. Walter Erba, right here at the Providence Cancer Center Institute, led the international clinical trials team for one of the doctor's drugs. So Dr. Erba's research eventually led to FDA approval. And this was a study right here done at Providence that we worked on. So it's challenging and fulfilling. You are part of the bigger picture, and you are part of approving drugs that are saving millions of lives. So, and it's, again, that's why I'm here. I love it, and I love to be part of something bigger. So not only is it fast-paced, but it also is ever-changing. Like I said, there's always new drugs that we're testing. There's new combinations of drugs. There's new devices. There's always something new. And it's since the beginning, when I first started, everything was done on paper, carbon copies. It was definitely a slower pace. Everything was paper charts. You would go up to the hospital floor to get records, and now everything's basically done electronically. You can take your computer and check records anywhere. So it is a changing field, which is good. It's made things better in a lot of ways. So it's a great field to get into.
So why join Foundations of Clinical Research at Portland Community College's Institute for Health Professionals? As I mentioned earlier, we actually developed this program with a lot of our community partners, and we developed it in response to requests by those employers. So you've met three of the experts here from Providence, but we also had members from OHSU, or the Oregon Health Sciences University, Kaiser Permanente, Legacy Health Systems, and others from around the country contributed to some of the ideas, served on our advisory board, and really worked to help create a curriculum that they thought would represent the field and really provide foundational knowledge for people to enter the field. It took us 18 months to kind of work with all of them and research and develop and survey clinical researchers throughout the country to inform some of these key components in the curriculum. It is taught by expert faculty. You've met three of them this evening. We have three others as well, one who works around the world, one who's been working in more rural areas in clinical research for many years, and another with some strong library science background and things. And they are here to share through the program, drawing on their various areas of expertise and their real life knowledge with clinical research in its ever-changing ways. So they can give you some concrete examples that come up in their workplaces or in other things that they're seeing. They're aware of what's changing in the field and can answer a lot of very timely questions for you and things. We deliver this program through live streaming technology, which we find to be really advantageous. You get to interact live with the instructors and the other students every single week. So you get to ask questions, you get to know each other, develop some relationships, and be able to grow together. We utilize Zoom, the platform that you're seeing right now, for the live streaming portion. And then we couple that with an online learning system where you have some of the reading articles, assignments. There's discussion boards, so you can keep in touch with each other throughout the program and each week connecting with each other. The faculty are available to answer questions. So we really try to bring you the best of the classroom learning from the comfort and convenience of your home or your office or wherever it is, so that you're minimizing your travel time and able to engage. All of those live stream classes are recorded. We know that life happens and every once in a while you'll have to miss one of those live opportunities. So it is recorded. This allows you to rewatch it at any time, whether it's because you couldn't make it or because you wanted to revisit some of the content and hear it again and refresh yourself on some of what that was taught. So that's all available for you. We also developed this with quite a variety of potential students in mind, whether people are wanting to enter clinical research for the first time, or whether somebody is an RN or is working in some other portion of the medical field and they want to enter clinical nursing or clinical research as part of that. So it's got a lot of opportunities for people to get that foundation and grow to there. We also designed it to be a pretty compact program. So you can complete this in 5 months, which is a pretty unique way to be able to start preparing for a job and learn more about the program and things like that.
So, so how can the foundations of clinical research help you? Well, so all of us instructors, like Amy mentioned, we work in the field. We've done this for years. We know how things are changing and what the best perspective and way to learn and grasp these new materials are. And we've all worked in the various fields of research, including regulatory and data management, and we've all done some auditing. So we all have different perspectives from the years we've done it. So we can share our knowledge with you and share what we've learned, good and bad, through the years, and what's helped us to be able to keep working in research and to be able to move through the different levels and opportunities there are. And I know Amy will probably mention this at the end, but we offer a unique internship here at Providence for the PCC students. And this takes everything that you're learning in the classroom and you really get to apply it to the real world. You'll use all of the databases and medical record systems that we use here at Providence. You'll get to actually apply the things to what you're doing to see if research really is for you. You'll get to see the day-to-day activities that we do, all the different meetings we're involved in, all the different trainings we go to. We get to go to site initiation visits when they're opening up a new study here. You will get to actually do hands-on and get the real-world experience of research. So even people with degrees and advanced degrees have a hard time getting in research. You really do need some research experience. Although a lot of us did did our training on the go as we started, but it's getting harder and harder to get your foot in the door. So a program like this really enables people to get the critical research information they need to get in somewhere, to get their start in research. And employers do really want people that are ready to go. There's always a learning curve with new hospital systems, new programs and stuff, but having the basic knowledge of research and the regulatory requirements that you will learn will allow employers to see that you do have this experience, that you will deserve a good shot. And this is something you can add to your resume that will really get employers, and especially those people that are the keywords they're looking for, will see that you've done this training. And this is one of the only programs that uses an actual oncology program or oncology protocol. So we have taken a protocol and taken out any sensitive or proprietary information so you can see what you're dealing with when you're in research. And so research goes all over the place. Like we mentioned, dermatology, there's pediatrics, but oncology is one of the toughest types of research to get into. So when we're working with our students, we do refer a lot to oncology stuff. And so if you can learn oncology research, it's the toughest one out there, that you will be prepared to do any type of research. So we're excited to be able to share this type of information with the students in this program.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, please.
So when I was trying to get into research, I wish this certificate had been here. I absolutely would have taken it. I was just thinking about when I was preparing for research interviews, and I was Googling the different systems that they used, and I actually emailed one of the companies and asked them if I could take the training to do the database, even though I wasn't actually working on the study. And so I had to get really creative to try to put some of the skills on my resume that I had experience with, even though I wasn't really having that job experience yet. You have to get super creative. And so if this had been available, I could have actually seen the systems that are being used and started to also think about what skills you already have that you can relate to research. Maybe you're coming from a different industry, but while you're in this certificate, you might think, oh, I actually have that skill, and how can I tell that to an employer in a meaningful way that applies to research?
Okay, there we go. Here's the details. Not sure why my presentation's a little jumpy tonight, so I'm sorry about that. So some of the details, we've already outlined a little bit of this for you, but just to make it a little compact here, we'll go through some bullets. It is a 5-month program. The classes will start April 18th and run through the end of the summer, but we have some things for you if you're committed to the program. There's an orientation before the program begins where we'll teach you a little bit, introduce you to some of the technology, and answer any questions you have about engaging in the program itself. We also have a little project that we'll talk about later at the beginning of that program. So it's 5-ish months for the most part, which for us in the world of education is 2 terms. This is cohort based, so everyone signs up with each other and gets to know each other as a group and grow together and that type of thing. So you get to develop your network and have some resources in the other students to share and grow as you go through this. We work to make this as effective and convenient as possible with those online virtual classrooms, the recordings, the online discussion boards, and assignment opportunities, so you get to really work with and build some of your skills and practice some of what you're learning there. As Rachel mentioned, this utilizes actual studies, namely an oncology protocol that she worked to redact so that you can really see something current and engage with firsthand experience of these materials that people are utilizing in the work. We tend to use a flipped curriculum for most of our modules in this, which means you get to pre-expose yourself to some of what you are going to be learning, reading and doing some assignments ahead of time, prepping yourself a little bit so that that classroom time can be utilized to really help you integrate the material and work with it and learn and grow from there, rather than being that first point of introduction. We really want you to be able to feel more engaged and competent, to grow with all of this as you're going. We also include 6 hours of good clinical practice training towards the beginning of the program. This is also known as GCP and is a requirement for anyone working in research throughout the industry and things. So we get you exposed to that, and you get to complete that training prior to seeking a job, and you can speak to understanding some of GCP should you have an interview, or just to be able to identify some more of what is needed and what people are looking for and why this is important in studies and everything. And then many thanks to Providence, they have created an optional internship for several of our students exclusively for graduates of this program. And we're very excited for you to have this opportunity to get to work with everything that you get exposed to in there. And they like to help make sure that people get a little bit of a broad exposure, but if there's certain areas that you're interested in, they're working to accommodate that as best as possible. So, all right, Armando's going to share a little overview of some of the modules and key topics that you'll be learning.
Okay, I unmute myself. So with regard to the program overview, one of the main things, of course, is when we're doing clinical research is knowing a little bit about, how did the history of research start, and then why regulations were put into place. Of course, bottom line is patient safety. So there's the ethics that we'll go over. As Amy mentioned, there's the good clinical practice, GCP guidelines, that a lot of the research protocols are basically the roadmap, what we as the research team need to follow. And a lot of these protocols are written with GCP practice, and of course FDA, following the FDA regulations. So when we look at a protocol and a patient comes in for a certain visit, a certain time point, we have to make sure we are following what the protocol indicates that we need to be doing, whether that's drawing blood, certain type of blood collections, whether it's here locally, drawn here, then sent out to another lab for a review. If it's imaging, if it's an actual doctor visit where the doctor has to see the patient, do an assessment. Are we doing imaging to get tumor measurements? Is the tumor shrinking based on when we first saw the patient, when they first started the treatment? In other words, is the drug working or is the drug not working? So all that has to take place, but we have to follow the protocol. When we don't follow the protocol, then we're deviating from that, and that's frowned upon. They call it a violation. So it's really scary, but when you look at it, it could be something as minor as, oh, well, we missed one lab collection. We didn't do a CBC draw, or we didn't do, when we did the vitals, we forgot to get the weight. So again, it's called a violation, but we have to really look at it and see what was missed. So we look at it and we'll say, oh, it's actually just a deviation. But the Institution Review Board, the IRB, still categorizes it as a violation. So again, we'll touch on the history and FDA regulations and good clinical practices and how that takes place within clinical research. And then bullet item number 2, exploring a study protocol. As Amy mentioned, Rachel put together a good template of what a protocol looks like, what it takes to develop a protocol, what are the different sections of that protocol. So that'll be explored along with team members. Kimberly touched on, what are the different roles. So the core team for me is you have a PI, the principal investigator, You have a number of sub-investigators, which are also doctors or nurse practitioners, depending on the institution, the investigational site. And then you have your research nurses, you have your data person, you have your regulatory person, and you also have your pharmacy person. And I will also include a statistics person in there, because there's there's data to be analyzed if you're doing it your own investigator-initiated study. So that's pretty much your core team, but it branches out from that. As we mentioned, there's contracts people, there's budget people, there's billing people. So there's a core team, but it expands. It's a vast team that it takes, and it really takes being a strong team, a good team, working well together, because together is what's helping down the road. Each little contribution that each team member makes is playing a vital role. Once the study gets ready to go to the FDA for review, it's like, what was your part of that submission to the FDA? So again, it's vital. You may think, well, I'm just doing data, but that data entry is vital, because again, we enter it, someone else is looking at it, QA is looking at it, monitors are looking at it, the sponsor is looking at it, eventually the FDA will look at it. So even though you think it's, well, I'm just entering a lab value or a visit date or what have you, it all plays towards the review that takes place with the FDA. Quality control, we kind of talked about the QA person, making sure, basically we want to make sure that we have our data audit ready. The rule of thumb is the FDA can come knocking at your door anytime they want, pretty much. You want to be audit ready. So in other words, you want to make sure, again, what you're reporting is actually validated by what's in the patient's medical record. So that's another central role. And then of course, the central documents, and that relates to more of the regulatory piece. There's from the regulatory aspect, there's the 1572, that's where the principal investigator, the doctor, would say, I would take responsibility in conducting this study and making sure, I am qualified, and everyone that's working with me as part of my team is qualified to do so in their specific roles. So that's one little central document. And then within that document, they want to know, this is a document that goes to the FDA, they want to know, where is that study being conducted? Well, it's done here at Providence, Portland, but it's also done at St. Vincent, and it's also done at Newburgh, in different clinic locations. They want to know where it's at, and they want to know what other labs are you using? Are you using just one lab, or are you using multiple labs, depending? Because again, the patient could be living out in Newburgh or 2 hours away, 4 hours away. Sometimes it's not convenient for the patient to come 4 hours just for a lab draw. Maybe they can go to a local lab and have the lab draw done there. Well, that's fine, but that lab has to be listed on this document. So that's just one document. And then of course, there's the CVs. They want to know the doctor's background. Do they have the proper training? What was their schooling? How many studies have they done before? There's CVs. I touched on labs, so they want to know which lab, what are the lab ranges. So if certain lab value gets out of the range, they want to know, well, what's the range? What are the range that's a normal range, and what's outside? And if it's outside that range, is it clinically significant or not? So all this information is gathered by the regulatory team. Of course, training is a big thing. FDA wants to know, who are the people conducting the study at your site, at your clinic, at your hospital, and are they qualified to do so? And if so, how do you prove that? So training documentation. I think Kimberly and Rachel mentioned when we open a study, we have a SIV, that's a study initiation visit. That's basically the sponsor coming out to the site and training us on the protocol. Here's the protocol. We're going to give you a thorough training. They want to meet with everyone who's going to be touching that protocol, working on that protocol with the patients, whether you're doing a lab draw, whether you're processing labs, you're collecting images to be sent out, whether you do data entry, whether you're consenting the patient. They need pharmacy. Again, pharmacy has to be involved. They want to know, how are you handling the drug? How are you being accountable for the drug? Let's say the drug temperature, the freezer electricity goes out, something happens. How is that drug maintaining, making sure it's still, what do they call it? Not destroyed, but not viable. They want to make sure that the contents of that drug is still, it's still okay to give to the patient. So pharmacy has to get involved in making sure they're trained. What are the backup systems? Are they accounting for all the drug that they ship out, that's returned, that's lost? Everything has to be accounted for. So those are part of the players and essential documents. And then how to run the study. Oops, hold on 1 minute. How to run the study. So study operations, I kind of touched on that. Again, it's like everyone's role and what it takes to conduct a study. Study visits, again, it's based on what the protocol requires. So they would be baseline visits, and then depending on the protocol, at what time points does that patient have to come in for certain visits to be assessed at certain time points. We talked about data, business management, reporting. I'm thinking more of, let's say there's a serious adverse event or a major side effect. What happened? What was it? What happened? Is it expected? In most cases, we know with this drug, this is most common. This may happen. The patient is going to have nausea. The patient will have fever. The patient will have this. But if something else happens that we don't know of, that's what we call not labeled, or it's unexpected. So we have different reporting mechanisms for that. So all that takes place as part of running a study. And then again, study visits is based on the protocol, and again, what time points does that patient have to come in for which assessments? So again, this is a quick overview, but there's a lot entailed with regard to running a study and the history and FDA and the protocol. So anything else you guys want to add? Okay.
Great. Thank you, Armando. And yes, there is a lot. So that's why we have the 5 months for everyone to learn a little bit more about it. Let's see, we'll come back to that one. So there is the time investment, and I wanted to help everyone get a little sense of what participating in this program means. As you know, it's a 5-month program, and the live classes are held every Thursday evening. They start at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and depending on the module for that particular day, the class could last anywhere between 2 and 3 hours. These are college level classes, so we always recommend that people preserve enough time to prepare for the class and do some of the assignments after the class. And we kind of follow that typical college model that for every hour of class time, you probably need 1 to 3 hours of prep and study time in there. So plan on, 5 to 10 hours a week, roughly, of studying and preparation, depending on how long that class is and how involved that particular module is that week and everything. You can space a lot of that out and engage with the discussion boards. Each instructor will provide you some of their expectations and help outline the assignments and any timelines that are needed to follow within that for the discussion boards. But typically, we've designed this in a module fashion, so you'll learn something one week and kind of move on the following week to the next level of that particular program and aspect and things of studies and research and things. There are 2 IRB meetings that we invite you to attend. IRB stands for Institutional Research Board meetings, and Armando and I are going to share a little bit more with you about that. As I mentioned earlier, it's ideal if you can attend one of these meetings before your very first class. This gives you an opportunity to get on site with someplace near you where they are doing some research, because institutional review boards are an essential part of that research component, and they will be there to monitor and ensure that everything is being done ethically and with human studies in mind. So everywhere that research is being done, there are institutional review boards to kind of independently help keep some checks and balances in there. This gives you a chance to learn a little bit of what's going on and some of the conversations that they're having, to provide some insights for you to clue into throughout the program that you're learning about. Gives you a sense of who may be in the room for these types of things, some of the study leaders and evaluators and all of those. You can get a little exposure and just get some insight into what's going on in your area, what kind of studies are being done, where they're being done, departments, and where to go to find out a little bit more about that. Then at the end of the program, we ask you to go to another institutional review board meeting. It may be on an entirely different topic, no problem there. It's more for you to help understand, what you got exposed to in the beginning and all that you've learned and integrated, and how you may see that meeting differently now that you've had all of the study and things like that. Clinical trials are being done all across the country, and you are encouraged to attend one in your area, one that's convenient to you. And Armando is going to share a little bit about how to find those.
So, as Amy mentioned, the Institutional Review Board, the makeup is of scientific and non-scientific people who are basically reviewing a protocol that, let's say, a certain hospital, medical center, clinic, a site wants to open up at their location. So the Institutional Review Board will review the protocol to make sure, number one is patient safety, but in regard to that are the benefits outweighing the risks? So that's what they look for. They look for the consent form. They'll review the consent form to making sure, is that study presented to the patient in terms that the patient will, the patient, potential research subject will understand. In other words, do they know what they're signing up to do? Because again, these are volunteers. They're volunteering to go on a trial. So that's what their institutional review board, their scope is with regard to reviewing new studies. So to find a review board, IRB, in your location or near to you, www.clinicaltrials.gov is pretty much the house where studies are, pretty much where studies are published as to where they're open, they're going to be open, they're close to enrollment, and then which location, and it also provides you a contact. It'll say, if you go onto the website, it'll ask you find a study. You can just punch in United States or the country that you're in and the state and do search, hit search. And it'll give you a list of various studies that are being conducted in that region. Let's say I punched in Portland, it'll give me a list of studies that are being conducted in Portland. And then if you click on the study title, it's a link, and if you scroll down to the contacts section, it'll give you who to contact with regard to that study. That may be not necessarily it may not be necessarily the institutional review board member or their office, but it would be most likely a research study coordinator, which could be a nurse or non-nurse. In other words, someone who is pretty much responsible with regard to knowing that study, is the patient eligible for that study or not? So that would be your starting point, asking that person. You would introduce yourself and say, you're part of this program. These are one of the requirements. Is there a contact that you have for the institutional review board that they can give you? And they most likely would refer you to, oh, it's so-and-so, here's their office, or here's the main number, give them a call. So that's where you would start. The other area, of course, if there's a major medical center in your area, most likely they're doing studies. Academia-based institutions are another place to look at. For example, OHSU, they have, of course, their own IRB. And in some places, believe it or not, don't have their own IRB. So they will work with the company, the sponsor, and say, oh, well, the sponsor is using, for this study, they're using this IRB. So they contracted with that IRB to be doing the review for that study. So they would have that information. So again, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov as your starting point, enter your location or the vicinity near you, it'll give you a list of studies, and then click on the study link and then go down to contacts, and you should find a contact for that study, and then you would take it from there.
Thank you, Armando.
Sure.
Rachel or Kimberly, did you have anything to add?
Rachel's looking for her unmute button, but she just wanted to remind you that it was called, that clinicaltrials.gov was a directory.
Thank you.
That was the word he was looking for.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, this would not be a requirement of the program, but I remember actually my first encounter with research was I was in a clinical trial as a healthy subject. So if you're bored and you kind of want a little jump into research, they always need healthy subjects, and you could sign up for a research trial and then you'd get the experience of reading a consent, and it might be something non-invasive. I was in an MRI study, which was pretty cool. It was looking at if multiple sclerosis could be early detected with high resonance MRIs. And it was cool. So if you're bored and you want to do that, I would recommend it. You can do ones that are non-invasive, of course. But yeah, and then you could maybe find out about the IRB through that.
That's a great suggestion. I was in one of those years ago myself. Great ways to learn, all levels. Okay. I did just want to explain a few minutes about the certificate that is part of this program. So we have registered this program with the state of Oregon as a non-credit training certificate. Through that, you earn 60 CEU hours, continuing education hours, and by completing both terms of the program successfully, which will be assessed by the instructors and things, doing all the assignments, staying engaged, participating in the discussion boards and any quizzes that they offer, and then doing the both IRB meetings and the associated papers with those. It's pretty sure that you would complete the program successfully and earn the non-credit training certificate. So that lets you add that certificate to your resume. This is a certificate recognized by the state of Oregon. It is not a certification through some of the larger clinical research programs. I'm going to put these guys on the spot. I didn't think to bring this into our original slide, but SOCRA is one of the national certifying bodies, and from what I understand, it's not even possible to sit for those exams until you've been working in the field for a couple of years. So I did want to draw a little bit of that distinction and invite them to chime in with some more details on where you may go after you've obtained the certificate and been working in the field a little bit. Anybody want to volunteer?
Sure. So SOCRA stands for the Society of Clinical Research Associates, and their requirement, they do have a 2-year requirement. And if you go to their website, www.socra.org, I believe that's correct, you can click on certifications. There's an exam that has to take place. Again, there's a 2-year requirement having clinical research experience, and it breaks down exactly what does that look like. Whether you work full-time or part-time, they're pretty detailed as to what the 2-year requirement is. And then once you apply for the certification, it's reviewed, and then they'll pretty much say, based on that fulfillment of that requirement, they'll say, yes, you qualify to take the certification program, and then you sign up for that. There is expenses involved. The certification program itself is a good 4-hour exam. And now it's actually done online, so it's locally. If you go online certification testing, I believe it's pretty much nationwide. I checked for Portland, and it's locally here within Portland now. Before, they would have it at certain institutes. For example, Providence hosted one. We had to have a minimum of 20 potential people who wanted to take the certification program in order for them to come out and do it here locally. Otherwise, you can go to one of their annual meetings also, which is another expense. But many of us who work in research, who are working toward that certification, go to that. The company sponsors it, so they pay for that, and we take our tests there. and you wait for the results. The thing that has changed now is that now that they offer it online, it's done locally, and the results are given within, I believe, before you even leave. Whereas if you before you would have to take it either at a local site or at the annual meeting, and then you would have to wait weeks before you get your results, whether you passed or not. I believe it's 80%. But again, all that information is on the SOCR website. The other organization is ACRP, right? Yeah, and that's also, it's pretty similar. But my take is I've done both. They're both pretty much time. They require there's a lot of pre-work, and they give you a study guide manual to review. And it covers everything from regulations through, they'll give you an actual patient case to review, data reporting, and you're pretty much wearing multiple hats because you're doing regulatory, you're doing what a nurse or a study coordinator who actually meets with the patient may encounter, data review, and so forth. So, and it also touches on good clinical practice. So it encompasses a lot. But it's worthwhile to get that. That's pretty much recognized. So if you are applying for a job, that's also recognized. So the foundation is a great step towards that direction with the PCC Foundation program. But also this other is an extension of that after the 2 years of experience within clinical research.
So I do want to just emphasize, we had a question there. The certificate is a non-credit training certificate, and that is portable to any state, any area really. As with many certificate programs throughout the country, part of that is being vetted, and our program was vetted by the State of Oregon's Department of Higher Education. So they looked at what we were doing, what we were offering, and how we ensure that this is worthy of a 60-hour CEU program and things. With any other program, you would also be wanting to share maybe what you studied and help a potential employer to understand the depth of what you learned with that. But it is certainly something that can be applied. We've had students from other states be very successful and appreciate what they learned through this. So certainly something you can add to your resume and share.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that all the studies that we work on are national, if not international. And so there's nothing, it almost like goes across state lines, in my opinion, because everything we're talking about is a federal regulation. So I wouldn't see anything that's really Oregon specific that we would be talking about in any of the classes. Can you guys shed any more light on that?
No, I just echo what Kimberly just said. I mean, we do global studies. So again, we were following, and most studies say we're following GCP, the clinical practice, and then also the FDA regulations. So yeah, I don't think there's anything to worry about with that regard.
Danielle just asked how often this program is offered. We try to offer this program once a year. So this next year will be offering it starting in April, so in a couple of months. I'm going to go ahead and finish our presentation here, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. Our team may respond to some of your questions in the chat menu as well. But I did just want to do a quick overview of some of the financial investment. We really work to keep this program as affordable as possible for everyone, and are excited to be able to offer it for only $11.99 for the entire program. Each term there's a small technology fee. I believe it's around $20 per term for you to access and get a lot of student help desk support should you need it for any of the technology. Occasionally there's updates and people have questions, so you have a good resource there. I've also worked with the college to set up a very special payment program. So once you register, I can share some information on how you can set up a monthly payment plan so that you can pay over the 5 months of the program rather than have it front-loaded as it typically would be. We do, because it's live streamed and online, do require you to have online access with a reliable source for that, and ask you to have a headset and microphone so that when you're talking to your students and the instructor during the class, you're not having as much of that background noise engaging. There's a little suggestions that we'll go over during the orientation for how to maximize that online learning for everyone. But it doesn't have to be anything fancy. This is just what came with my phone. So, but we do ask you to have that. And as we mentioned earlier, there are no books required. It might have been mentioned in the chat there. We provide everything that you need for the program. So they're uploaded and shared throughout the program as you need. Anything else you guys want to add there? So the next steps for anyone interested in registering for the program is to create your MyPCC account, do the application to the college so that you can obtain your student ID. Registration for the program does not even open until March 6th, so you have some time to do that. And once I get the video uploaded from this presentation, I'll send a follow-up email to everyone, and I'll be sure to include that link for where you can go to start getting your MyPCC account and everything. And then you can flag your calendar for early March and register for the program. About once a week, I'll email everyone who's presently registered. We don't have an automated system for this yet, so it's all hand done. So I'll try to register everyone new, or send everyone who's registered a welcome letter, send you a detailed schedule. We've got everything all outlined in really user-friendly ways for you, so you know exactly which days, which modules are taking place, and we'll send you some more information on the IRB and just a few of those details, as well as I encourage you to mark your calendar for the student orientation and everything. And now we're ready for our Q&A. So please can type your answers in the group chat, or send us a note if you want to ask it verbally, and we'll unmute you, or you can unmute yourself and ask your question too. Have you guys been seeing questions in the chat that you want to answer to everyone?
Yeah, we've been yeah. So if you have a question to ask, maybe monitor the chat to see if it has already been addressed. We're trying to answer them as they come in.
Great, thank you. We saw a question in there, I think I'm unmuted, yes. Saw a question in there about the optional internship, and I think that Rachel responded that that becomes available and something you can apply for towards the end of the program. And Kimberly and Rachel can share a little bit about their work with that internship and one of the success stories through that.
Yeah, so Rachel and I were sort of the primary, I guess, mentors or supervisors for the interns last year. And that was really, really fun. And we've learned a lot, and we're really excited to, I guess, beef it up this year. And, we have a lot of ideas and plans for our interns, and we, loved all of them. They were really great interns, and we ended up having the opportunity to hire one of them, and she is currently working as one of our project assistants. And that was really exciting for us to be able to have her and then end up having her on our team. So again, I guess what I couldn't stress more is this program and your internship will be what you make of it. If you just go through it and, it's fine and whatever, and put on your resume, then that's all it's going to be. But if you take advantage of it and really use it to learn from us, make contacts, network, grow your skills, then I can almost guarantee it's gonna get you something in the end, and it's just gonna be really worthwhile.
Great, thank you, Kimberly. Oh, okay, there we go.
There we go. Thank you. So as Kimberly mentioned, the internship is really what you make of it. So if you come in with a positive attitude and really willing to try the different things, we offer different types of programs for you to work in, different projects. Kimberly was great about creating specific projects for our interns, so they had ownership over their own projects and had to have a completion. And it was a really great opportunity for the interns to see what we do, and to also take ownership of something that they could call their own and say, I actually created this project, I finished it, and I made part of a successful team. So like we mentioned in some of the chats, as you get to the end of the program, you will apply for the internship. Last year we had 3 interns. So we're going to take it case by case. We'll review all the people applying for the jobs, but you do have access, like we said, to all of our hospital programs, all of the programs we use to enter data. You are literally one of us. And so you will get to see what we do. Every bit and piece is part of research. And so it's a real hands-on experience that is not offered in a lot of places. So we hope people take advantage of applying for the internship. The internship, it really varies. It depends on schedules because a lot of people are in classes during the day or they're working full time. So it's really flexible based on the student's availability. So we try to do at least 4 to 8 hours a week. And we've had an intern that asked for more hours. So it's really based on availability, and we try to be really flexible with your schedule. We give you your own spot, so you will you'll have your own desk and workspace and get to go to various meetings and shadow nurses and different parts of this research team that we talked about tonight. So it's, again, it's a great opportunity. Yeah, 12 weeks. Thank you. I know you asked that. Yeah, so 12 weeks is about what we're going for our intern. So 3 months.
So we are very excited about this internship opportunity for people in the Portland area or people who might want to come to Portland for a few months and enjoy this opportunity. It is not to say that there aren't opportunities in other areas similarly, and I presume that Rachel would probably be glad to talk to others in other areas if you get contacts who might be open to creating an internship and sharing a little bit about what some of the tips and tricks that she found that made this really successful. I did see a question about prerequisites, and I'm excited to share that we have been able to remove the prerequisites and the application for this program that were originally part of the program. We wanted to make that as easy for everyone because we really did design this with the working professional in mind. Part of why it's in the evening in case people are looking at transitioning roles and things like that. That said, we know from our partners that there is a tremendous amount of need for understanding a few things when you're actually working in the field. So if you have not already taken medical terminology and preferably anatomy and physiology, we highly encourage you to complete those courses before you start working and start in that job. But they are no longer required in order for you to take this class. So you can either take them concurrently if you would like, and we do offer some online as well through that, so I can share with you some that we've pre-vetted and can attest that they're going to provide you some of that knowledge that is really needed, because there is a wide range of these classes out there. Some are much more cursory and some go far in depth and with cadaver labs and things that you probably would not need to succeed in this role either. But it's also possible for you to take those afterwards or maybe while you're completing the internship. But we wanted to make this very clear that we recommend those classes, but they're no longer required in order to enroll in the program. Here's a SOCR related question. One of you mind fielding that? For SOCR certification, how many years of working experience? 2 years. But as I believe Armando explained, that 2 years can vary a little bit, whether it's you've been working full-time or part-time, right? So it might be a total hours of 2 years of full-time. Am I right? So this would probably be outlined on the SOCR website, but roughly 2 years of experience working in research, but it may be doing specific aspects within research there. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. We are so excited to be bringing this program to you in just a few months, and so grateful for our panelists and experts there. So thank you, thank you, thank you all.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. I have one question.
Please.
How in depth is your regulatory teaching that you'll be having?
Yeah, so with regard to the regulatory, I'm actually taking over these modules from the previous instructor. So I did a review on it, and it's pretty in depth. He pretty much covers the history of it, back to like when do we think actual clinical research took place. It touches on how research was done, which was not really done with the patient in mind. And then of course it goes into good clinical practices and the FDA regulations and so forth. So it's pretty in depth, I think.
Great. And certainly if you have more questions that come up, you can email those to me. And again, many thanks to all of you for joining us this evening, and to the panelists for being here to share so much about what they've been doing and what they're offering to you through the classes. So thank you all.